Yeah.
And the other thing you mentioned too, I mean, retention is obviously the name of the game, especially in product. And so that's the North Star metric that we're all focused on. But retention is obviously a long tail indicator, and it's hard, right? It's hard for teams to understand, well, what am I working on today that's going to have an impact on retention? And if I am measuring retention, whether it's going up or down, how can I attribute it back to, oh, my retention is going up because of that thing that we released 3 months ago or whatever. So what recommendations do you have for folks to connect the dots?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, retention, renewals, it's always a lagging indicator, right? So interesting, one of the things that we've been working on at Pendo is writing a model, and the model is specific in each of our customer subscription environments that says, if you can get your customers to use feature X, Y, or Z, the probability of them attriting is very, very low. And so now as a product person, you know, okay, if I can get every one of my users to use those features, my retention should go up, right? And so that's the key is it's like, okay, yeah, sure, retention, usage, but like, what are the key moments that matter? What are the key sticky features that once your users use it, they don't leave? And then focusing on adoption and increased usage of those features, right? At Pendo, we talk a lot about, there's user growth, right? To your point about active users growing. And then there's feature growth, right? People are using more and more of your features, right? And then there's really focusing in on those sticky, important features and get more and more people to use those as well. So it's sort of multiple different facets and ways of thinking about how to drive things you can actively manage and see improving on a day-to-day basis, or sometimes a weekly or monthly basis, while you're focusing on retention as a longer-term goal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. And so you had mentioned earlier about these guides that you're implementing. So I assume that that's kind of connected to like, how do we actually nudge people or incentivize them to adopt those features? So tell me about that. So I'm measuring my retention. I have this belief, or I'm getting some feedback that, yeah, these are my sticky features. So as a product leader, what can I do to try to get other people to drive adoption?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about Pendo's guides or in-app messaging is that it's very tightly coupled to the analytics. And so you can personalize these messages to segments of your users, right? I want first-time users of my products to see this set of messages, right? I want, because I'm trying to increase usage or adoption of a particular feature, I know that they get there from this page that they're already using. So when they come to this page, I can target that's the right time and the right group of people to read this message and be educated on the value and why they should use this other feature that I'm trying to nudge them to. So the key with the in-app messaging and guides is really around that personalization and being able to get the right message to the right people at the right point in their journey. So you have to combine, you can't think about the analytics and the guides as two separate things. It's all about how do you put them together.
Yeah. So I run into this a lot, with my clients, where they'll release a new feature and they think of it, it's like this campaign. It's this moment in time. We're releasing this new feature, and everybody who is an existing customer today is all going to get the same message at the same time. And then anyone who joins in the future, well, that's just kind of swept in with the other stuff. But what you're saying is there's a certain point in every customer's journey where this feature becomes more interesting because you've done this foundational work, or you've solved the first two problems and now you're on to the third one. And so now's the time where we should start introducing. And I think what a lot of founders do is they either they just ignore it, to the Morgan Stanley example. They don't even know that these features are there, or they have this huge menu, right? There's that sidebar, the three, the hamburger menu, and there's just all these features in there right? But there's no flow, there's no journey. And so I do a lot in user experience design, and this is kind of what we talk about, but it's hard. It's hard. That's it. So what we do is we just map things out on the whiteboard. Now it's a virtual whiteboard, right? But it's like, what is their first day, week, month, quarter, year journey, and and how are they evolving and growing over time, and at what point do we inject both, whether it's getting feedback or new features, or like kind of leveling up their the flexibility and the options and the more power user features and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, it gets really nitty gritty. That's why I like to dig into that kind of stuff. But is there anything that that you can think of top of mind that could make it a little bit easier for somebody who's just kind of trying to do this for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't do it all at once, to your point, right? It's a continuous process. So focus on what matters, get results, start to see the numbers that you're measuring change and the customer behavior you're looking for change, and then do the next thing. Don't try to solve it all at once. I really liked the way you were talking about sort of curating, whiteboarding the entire customer journey. It is very easy for product leaders, for founders, to think about their product launch versus the customer journey, right? And it's, to your point, this is not even just about guides. I mean, guides is a portion of how you solve this, but product launches, you're the only one who cares about your product launch, right? Your customers care about the problem they're trying to solve when they need to solve it. And they need to know about your product launch, but they need to know about it when it's right for them, right? And so to your point around curating the journey, and I think as product people, historically, we think about the product journey a lot of times as once you've logged into the product and what the screens are like and the workflows to get completion, but we don't think about buying and educating and continually educating. We don't really think about the full customer journey with us versus the software experience itself. And I think that comes back to what you were talking about, which is much more thoughtful about how to continually educate and communicate and give people things in sort of bite-sized chunks.
Yeah. So the way I kind of try to describe it with my clients is, there's usually, even when we do map out a customer journey, we do it as if there's this just linear path that people are taking, and we kind of see it all on the whiteboard at once. And we try to anticipate kind of the path that people are going to take and what have you. But what I try to do is to say, well, let's just batch all of our customers into cohorts, right? And say, hey, these are people that are just brand new. These are people who've been with us for a few months. These are people who are power users. These are people who are maybe just hanging on. So not just where they are in terms of time, but also in terms of engagement or industry or other things. And then we think about, well, how would this experience differ? How can we create an experience that's more tailored to them? And then in tools like Pendo, when we have analytics, but then also in the app itself, we say, well, we know the date that they registered, and then that puts them in a cohort, and that cohort is just a label. And then there's a little job running in the background that's kind of moving them through these different cohorts as they go. And then we have all these different tools, whether it's like an email automation platform like a Mixpanel, whether it's like an in-app in-app feedback, or even when we're asking them, this is a big one, NPS, right? NPS is, you don't ask a customer if they would refer you to their friends after they've been with you for a day, right?
They're not ready.
So, they're not ready, but they just slap this thing in there and they say, okay, hey, you've come back. Would you recommend this to your friends? And they're like, no. And everyone freaks out. Oh my gosh, our NPS score is terrible. It's like, well, no, I just don't trust you yet. I haven't had the experience yet. Ask me in a few months, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so even timing those kinds of things to say, only ask for NPS once somebody has been with you for a month or a few months or whatever it is.
Yeah. And Eric, same thing goes for asking about validating enhancements, right? So we often use our own tool, and our customers use our tool to validate their next feature enhancement with their customer base. Do you like it this way? Do you like it this way? Is this one more important than this one, right? Like running a survey. And same thing. You can't ask the person who literally just logged in for the first time some complex feature they haven't even gotten to in your product yet, right? And so it really is curating out that journey.
Yeah, I had one client. This was a couple years ago where they were a health and wellness product, and we had done some UX research on a sort of a life planning type of feature where you're putting all this data into the platform, and then we use AI and we make all these recommendations about your diet and your exercise. They just give you this whole life plan, and the customers absolutely loved it. The validation was incredible, and so the executive said, "We've got to capitalize on this. Let's do a huge marketing campaign." And we're going to take these testimonials and we're going to just spend a ton of money on advertising. And they did. And they got a huge influx of new customers. And it completely flopped because they were all brand new.
Yeah.
And that feature was way down the funnel. They didn't have data. And so this thing was giving them recommendations when they knew nothing about them.
Yeah.
And so they were just bad recommendations. And this got a little bit hairy because they were even recommending like supplements and things like that can have, health implications.
Yeah.
And so there was this huge break of trust where it was like, you're telling me to do this thing and you don't even know me. I don't trust you. And they got negative flack on social media, and it was a total failure because we took something that was resonating really well at one part of the journey and tried to go cram it in at another part of the journey.
Right.
And anyway, there was a lot of
It's a great story.
Post-mortem after that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I could honestly talk to you about this for hours and hours and hours. But I'd love to, with the time we have remaining, kind of zoom out a little bit and talk principles. And let's just sort of start with your principles as a product leader. Obviously, as you mentioned, it's kind of a new role, but it's definitely a role where there's a lot of variability still out there in the marketplace. And so, what are your principles in terms of how you lead and drive product at your organization?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's all about driving customer value. That's where the fun is, right? Trying to find interesting, hard problems to solve that can be meaningful for your customers, and that's where it all starts. Shipping a product just to ship a feature just to ship a product. I always tell my team, and I truly believe, like, the excitement is not on launch day, right? Mm-hmm. The excitement is after month 1 and 6 months and year 1 and year 2 and seeing success for your company as well as for your customers. So, I try to take that maniacal focus on the customer approach. And I try to take a very outcome-driven approach. It's not about what feature you shipped, but it's about how many people use it and do they love it, and what problem you're solving. So that's stylistically how I like to keep my team focused and what I think is important for the company. I'm pretty, as you can tell, direct and authentic. I'm just myself. And I do have a technical background, like we talked about in the beginning. And so it is important for me to understand how products work and to be able to think about sort of the world of possibilities that are out there with the infrastructure for the products that I lead and getting into the technical side of things. Actually, Pendo's the first place. I'm not also the chief technology officer and chief product officer. I've usually run engineering and product. And so that's, I think, an important part of my leadership style too, is to really understand how things are working. So you can make good product decisions. That's also important to me.
So that's really big. So I'm an executive coach, and I work with a lot of chief product officers and also, sort of product focused founders who are in that CPO role. And this is a big area, really of insecurity, is this, I'm not technical, right? And they get in this mode where either they're deferring everything to engineering, and they don't have a good enough sort of BS detector, if you will, or again, they just have this this doubt that what they're building is possible or feasible or valuable or whatever. And so, what do you think for other product managers or founders out there? How can they kind of overcome that I'm not technical stigma?
But I think there's a couple ways. One, you have to have an engineering partner you trust, right? So even though I am technical, coming into Pendo, I'm not a founder. I came well after the product was established. I've been here about 2 years. Eric Trone is one of our co-founders with Todd Olson, our CEO, and Eric has been our CTO from day one. And obviously the depth that he knows our product, even if I'm technical, I'll never have the depth that Eric has, right? But what I do have with Eric is trust.
Yeah.
And what I do have is the ability to ask questions. And I think that as a product leader or as a founder, if you're not technical, it's nothing to be afraid of. What you just can't be afraid to ask questions. And if things don't make sense, to keep asking questions, and there are no stupid questions. And you have to make sure that your partnership with engineering is based on trust.
Yeah.
I've heard people say before things like, oh, I like when my product and engineering teams have a lot of friction. Because they'll challenge each other. And I'm like, I think you can challenge each other without having friction. I think you need trust and to be able to ask the right questions.
Yeah, no, that's great. Good. That does resonate with me. So one of the things that I recommend is, if you're sitting in a meeting, any word that you don't understand, just write it down, right? And then find an opportunity to sit down with somebody, right? Just any engineer or CTO or whatever it is, and just say, can we just go through some of these things and maybe walk me through? I'd like to learn more about our, whatever it is, right? About our data platform. I'd like to learn more about what this, whole AI thing that we're doing, or this node thing, or whatever it is, right? Anything that you write down, you don't say like, I have no clue what this thing means. You could just Google it, right? And say, oh, okay, I kind of get it. But then just say, hey, I'd love for you to walk me through, because on one hand, we don't obviously want to be, we don't want to be insecure, but also we need to kind of face those fears head on and say, no, I am technical. I'm the product leader. Like, I'm technical in the realm of product management. There's this other domain where I don't have as much knowledge, but that doesn't mean that I can't learn it and at least have a rudimentary understanding of how it works, because I need to understand whether or not what I'm trying to build is feasible.
Yeah, and your technical leaders and technical team need to be able to explain things in words you can understand, right? So if you have curiosity and you have the courage to ask the questions, then holding each other accountable, just like I have to be able to explain why we're doing something and what my users are expecting and the problem we're trying to solve in a way that engineers can understand. Engineers need to be able to understand the technical solution or tech debt that we need to fix, or, some sort of architecture they're proposing in a way that makes sense, because those things are also driving customer value. And so it's important we can all talk about them in a language we understand.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, right? So that if a product manager's in a room and everybody's just talking over their head and throwing around technobabble and not really giving any consideration to that product manager, that can create some of that insecurity, and also probably create some of the negative outcomes that come from that, which is essentially, like you said, a breakdown of trust, of speaking different languages. So that's really interesting. So lean in, right? Write some things down. Don't be afraid to ask questions, to express your lack of understanding of some deep technical thing, but understand that you are technical in your domain, and you have to understand how the product works in order to really be able to lead it and drive it.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. What about, leadership principles in terms of, managing your team and just in general?
Yeah, I think I'm probably tough but fair. I think, like most leaders of successful companies, driving business outcomes is important. Expecting excellence is important, but equally trusting your team and not micromanaging and giving them freedom to innovate, which also sometimes means failure, is equally important. And so to me, it's all about hiring the right people, setting high expectations, communicating vision, communicating goals, and then letting people have the freedom to run their teams and their part of the business. You can't get to these companies at scale if you're trying to do everything in hero mode yourself. And it is easy. It's easy to lean on yourself, say, well, I could just do this faster, or I could just do this better myself. But that's not how the team succeeds. And so for me, from a leadership perspective, it's important to, be able to roll up my sleeves and jump in there when the company or the team needs me to. But primarily my role is to hire and retain top talent and communicate where we're going so we're all aligned.
Yeah. 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 I kind of joke sometimes to say, like, if you find yourself having to micromanage people, then you messed up, right? You didn't
hire the wrong person.
You hired the wrong person, right? And not to say that there's anything wrong with them, but you need to know what kind of person you need in that role so that you can get out of their way, right? And let them do their job. That's actually how I became a coach, so I'm an engineer in background, and leading without authority has always been my MO. I mean, I was a project manager, which is obviously a non kind of reporting type role. I was a scrum master. I was a product owner. So I've been in all of these roles where I just can't tell people what to do. I have to figure out how to motivate and inspire them to, to be intrinsically motivated. And then, so coaching just was natural to me. And so now I coach my clients to become coaches, right? And I personally, I have a leadership model that I call full stack leadership. And on the bottom, we've got the kind of trifecta of operations, strategy, and vision as our, like, where we are today, where we're going, and then how are we going to get there. But then the layers on top of that, once you've got that sort of sorted out, is storytelling and then coaching, where storytelling is how do we put everything into context. And then coaching is, now how do we flip this whole thing around and make it about them instead of about us? And then now we're internalizing all of that stuff, and then they take it and run with it and become great. And then, then we can elevate as leaders.
That's a fabulous service you're providing to founders and product leaders.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm doing my best day in and day out, Well, Trisha, it has been a real pleasure speaking with you today. Our time went by in a blink. Like I said, I could talk about this stuff all day long, but I know you got places to be. Again, thank you so much for your time today. I really look forward, I'm really happy that we got this time together.
Me too, Eric. Thanks for having me, and appreciate you doing this podcast and for having me on.